Hello, welcome back to another episode of Shape Your Truth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kamika, and today we have with us our special guest, Dr. Kimberly Walker. And Dr. Walker is a psychiatrist with over 30 years experience, and she had an incredible journey with deep insight into mental health, okay? And today we're going to be talking about mental health in the workplace. And also, we want to talk about how mental health can be affecting our weight and how we deal with issues and social issues and how that can play a part in affecting our weight as well. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Walker, for being here. And I really hope we didn't get this. We got this to her a little bit too late. We're going to try to discuss a little bit about how this goes into weight and mental health. So excuse us. We sorry for the delay that we gave her. We didn't give her all the information in time. Okay, so we just briefly go over that and talk a little bit about transfer addiction, just in her own thoughts. My own. We'll just talk about that and food addiction, and we'll see where it goes from there. But we really want to get to the main point of why we're here with Dr. Walker today, and she's going to talk to us about the discovery of Rapid Transformational Therapy, RTT. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Walker. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Walker, thank you. Dr. Walker, can we start by explaining your thoughts around this new wave or new everybody's enlightenment to mental health, and how you've seen that play out in your practice?
So I would say that mental health issues obviously have been around for a really long time. There's been such a stigma about discussing mental health and admitting that there are mental health issues. I mean, that's been a big part of the problem. One thing that COVID-19 did was it really exposed weaknesses in the healthcare system in general, but especially dealing with mental health. And folks are just more open about mental health struggles. Athletes talk about depression and anxiety. And so when celebrities can talk about these things, it makes it a little more acceptable for other people to discuss it. So happily, there's a lot more information, a lot more willingness to talk about it and be open about the need to get help for mental health issues.
Okay, so I think what I'm thinking you're saying is there's been less stigma. It's being destigmatized around having a mental health condition today.
I'm not going to say it's destigmatized, but I think the stigma has definitely gone down.
Down. Okay. So he's getting improvement in that. And do you see a change in accessibility or access to care is still an issue?
Access to care is still an issue, but I think that with the expansion of Medicaid, that really did help folks be able to get help. And there has been more of a parity where mental health issues can be treated much more readily than they used to be. Insurance companies really need to treat mental health, whereas there were a lot of limitations that occurred before some of the parity legislation came through.
Okay. And so we know we're going to talk about the RTT, but just your approach to mental health. Do you welcome holistic approach, holistic benefits toward helping with your mental health, doing things other than medication or prescription of medication, I should say?
So I'm going to say I am a psychiatrist, and so I am trained to use medication. And, there's probably has been a bias in my training, but that's certainly not all that I do. I talk to my patients. I do recommend supplements. I encourage folks to do research. I mean, I am not a holistic practitioner in the way of prescribing herbs and that kind of thing, but I certainly have an open mind and I want folks to do their research and to let me know what's going on so that we all work together, because certain supplements can actually have interactions if
A lot of
on
medicine.
medication. So it's important to have open communication.
Yeah, I think that's very important because I feel like in past times it was just do what I say, kind of don't ask me questions. But now people are, with all the internet, they have a lot of questions. And even when they come into the pharmacy, I'm like, why do you want to take this thing? They heard it from some cousin or auntie or something. But why is it beneficial to you? And yeah, so I think people are trying to be more informed. It can be a little bit annoying when you study allopathic medicine and they've heard about something and they rather use some foo seem like to me, instead of getting treatment. So yeah, it's very tough to navigate that and still want people to do things that, get to the bottom of why this is happening. So yeah, so I agree with you on that. So let's move on to the next portion, and we're going to talk about a little bit about mental health in the workplace. And so, why is it important for our employers to um, have some priority around mental health?
Well, I mean, obviously, mental health, I mean, the brain and the body are all connected. So if we are not functioning well with respect to mental health, that cuts into productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And studies have shown that if folks are depressed, anxious, struggling with their mental health, there are a lot of missed days.
Mm-hmm.
And so productivity is just really down. And in more severe cases, there can be violence and, terrible things can happen. So employers would do well to have concerns and want their employees to be healthy on all fronts.
Right, right. And do you think there's some strategies you could recommend, if even dealing with your patient, that you would recommend organizations or even small businesses to implement to kind of help with ensuring that their employees are supported with the mental health issues?
Well, I think that employers need to work with their. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, I'm not quite prepared to answer that question.
Oh,
So,
it's okay. I was just thinking, I mean, I'm sorry we didn't get you the right information in time. But yeah, I was just thinking along the lines of like, when they come to you, and they say, my job did this and that, did you ever think of something like maybe if the job just did this thing, maybe they may be a little bit better at handling this issue? I know for myself, a personal experience, not having been to a mental health professional myself before some, serious problems happened at work. um there's not like a real openness to go talk to your job about it. You know what I mean? So that's what the lines I was thinking. I don't know if you have dealt with that in your practice, but
mhm,
that's the lines I was thinking. But
mhm.
can you share something in your personal experience? I know we talked about burnout, and that's exactly what I was talking about when I said issues at work. How has that happened, and how is that your story about having burnout? We talked about you having some issues with that, and then how you discovered RTT.
Okay. So my story is that, I was practicing psychiatry full time. I was a medical director for an outpatient mental health center, and I had a private practice. I've always had a private practice. And COVID came along. And so dealing with misery day after day, and I'm
Mhm,
not in the office anymore because everything
mhm,
is shut down. So I'm in front of a screen.
mhm,
And so every day, anxiety, depression, suicidal feelings, it just really took a toll on me.
mhm,
And to say the least, I developed compassion fatigue and
mhm,
I was burned out. And
mhm,
I wasn't sure I could continue to practice psychiatry.
mhm,
So while trying to figure out what I was going to do,
mhm,
I came across Rapid Transformational Therapy. I had taken a class and was asked to look up some thought leaders in mindset and
Mhm.
those kinds of issues. And
Mhm.
I ran across Marissa Peer, who is the developer of Rapid Transformational Therapy,
Mhm.
and reading about the process, which uses targeted hypnotherapy to go after the root cause of an issue
Mhm.
and identify limiting beliefs. Reading about this process was made me feel like this was really something that could help my patients
Mhm.
and help them very quickly. So I decided to become certified in this modality. And while becoming certified, of course, I'm having the sessions myself.
Mhm.
So I am discovering these limiting beliefs that I had that I
Mhm.
really not aware of. As a Black woman growing up in America,
Mhm.
I just put my head down
Mhm.
and tried to do what I was supposed to do. My
Mhm.
parents gave me a good upbringing, and the message was, we do the best we can.
Right.
And but scenes came up during hypnosis, which showed me that I had taken in some beliefs like I'm not enough,
Mhm. Yeah.
and I'm different and I can't connect. So these limiting beliefs were operating under the surface without my realizing it.
Mhm.
And um, happily, this process does allow you to not only identify them but resolve them.
Right.
So it's a very powerful modality that I think is very exciting. Has lots and lots of applications. So that's why
Mhm.
I do enjoy using it. Mhm.
It sounds very interesting, and I'm seeing that same thing you're talking about, wave toward doing something, going to the root cause, was the same thing a lot of me and my other friends were experiencing in the pharmaceutical industry, in pharmacy. We went to functional medicine, so a lot of us became functional medicine practitioners from that. It got to be something more than these drugs, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
the same thing, the fatigue, the burnout, the not, I think it was two, not being able to deal with issues because you're so busy, and then that stillness of being sick or being off work during that pandemic made you have to deal with some of the things maybe you were not, you're running from, right? And it's, you can't run no more. It's right there, so you have to deal with it. And I found that even with my own profession, the same thing. It was in wanting to get to the deeper cause, root cause, and why something was, why these illnesses were happening in
Mhm.
yourself, and then use them to help other people. So I thought that was really powerful what you said about that. Yeah, get into why you, and then you're going to give it to your patients. I think that's awesome. Okay, so let's dive into. You touched a little bit about limited beliefs in there, and strategies about how you dealt with your limited beliefs. When you dealt with the limited beliefs, how do you every day on a day, like some daily tips that you do when you have those kind of mindset issues? What do you do to kind of like curb those beliefs or speak to that doubt or
Okay.
negative belief?
Okay. So the interesting thing about limiting beliefs is they can be unconscious, but now that I know that, these things
Hmm.
have been dealt with largely, but of course it's a journey. It's a daily journey. So when something comes up, when I know that I am procrastinating or feel frozen about something, I have to think about what is the situation? Does this belief is this belief true?
Hmm. Mm, yeah.
So
Hmm.
challenge the belief,
Hmm.
okay? And what are some small steps I can take in order to make some progress? Don't engage in all or nothing thinking.
Hmm.
Um, just look at the situation and see what is it that I can do to make progress. The nice thing about RTT is that the client does receive a transformation recording that has the positive suggestions that come out of the session. So I always recommend folks listen to the recording
Hmm.
because those same suggestions can help help with your cognitions, help rewire how you're thinking, and
Mhm.
help you to continue to move forward.
Mm. Thank you for that. Very powerful. Thinking on it myself, you know. So I wanted to dive in a little bit into mental health and how it affects our weight and our eating habits. Do you see a lot of I know you probably you do. You see a lot of correlation between
Mhm,
how they cope or deal with whatever mental health issue by using food.
mhm.
Um, can you tell me your thoughts on that?
Well, so food has emotional underpinnings.
Mm-hmm.
Food means different things to different people, but um, we've heard the term emotional eating.
Mm-hmm.
So, comfort food. So, certain foods may make us feel better, and certain dynamics in the family can wrap around food. So, sometimes parents might say, if the child is sad, oh, here's a cookie, this will make
Mm-hmm.
you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
So, food, because it has such emotional ties, in terms of weight management, for instance, if someone's on a diet, while they're on a diet, it's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
when the diet ends, you fall back to your default
Mm-hmm.
wiring. And if the emotional issues around food haven't been dealt with, the same behaviors are going to occur, and
Right.
the weight is going to come back. So RTT can also deal with weight management because
Mm-hmm.
the emotional underpinnings are identified. Scenes may come up. I remember a client of mine whose father would give her treats. She didn't see her father very often. So
Mm-hmm.
when she saw her father, he gave her treats. So that was a tie for her. Treats reminded her of the love of her father, but she wasn't aware of that until the hypnosis occurred. So once she was able to make that connection, we were able to resolve that, and she can feel the love another way. She doesn't have to have sweets to feel the love. So the emotional issues around food are very, very powerful.
Yeah. And we didn't prepare for that conversation, but I would love to have you back and we go into more detail about that and obesity and the bias and all that at a
Mhm.
later date. Okay. So
Okay.
today, just wanted to make sure we get to talk about issues that you are working on right now. So can you tell us about a little bit more about your projects that you're working on? And then I'm going to have a Q&A session. We just do some questions. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So the work that I am doing is working with professional women of color,
Mm-hmm.
such as myself. We are dealing with, especially in academia, corporate, legal, we're dealing with, let's face it, oppressive systems.
Mm-hmm.
These systems have certain rules. Some are known and some are unknown, but it's unfair.
Mm-hmm.
And in these systems, we can be hurt. We can deal with microaggressions all the time, slights, outright racial discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Experiences can deposit limiting beliefs, which is not surprising. And I mean, every day you hear someone who is resigning from positions just because it's just unhealthy.
Right.
It's toxic. So I work with women who are feeling stuck, feeling burned out,
Mm-hmm.
largely because of these issues. And the RTT
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
can help to deal with these limiting beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
resolve them, and then they're freed up to, whether it's to change jobs or whether to be more effective where they are and to challenge or start their own business. That's the work that I am doing at this point. So,
It's really fascinating, and I think a lot of people need it. As I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm like, maybe I need, I need a couple of sessions with you. But there's those fears or the unknown about what's going on. What are the phobias that people have about being hypnotized and doing things? How do you address that?
Sure. So, I mean, I explained that hypnosis is actually it's very natural state of deep
Mhm,
relaxation. You remain in control, so you're very relaxed and you're able to concentrate very easily.
mhm,
You know, if you have driven someplace that you're familiar with and you don't have to pay attention to every single turn you take,
mhm.
sometimes you get to your destination and you can barely remember the trip. So
Right.
that means you've been in a light trance state. So obviously you're not don't have your eyes shut, but hypnosis is just a deeper trance than occurs, when you zone out. So
Mhm.
it's a natural state and you remain in control. And I'm an ethical person. You can check me out. I'm not going to ask you to do anything that you wouldn't normally do.
Mhm,
Uh, it's completely ethical. And so there's a long explanation about hypnosis
mhm,
and practicing, and a recording is given to help relax. So I try to normalize it because it's really a very natural state.
mhm.
Mhm.
It sounds very interesting. Something that needs to be given more attention to. Okay, so we talked about the limited release. We addressed some of the holistic things. We talked about burnout in the workplace. Um, I wanted to say, where can we reach out, or what kind of health professional to reach out? What title should they have if you know somebody when you want to do this treatment and they're in their state, or they want to get maybe their insurance to cover it if they had a practitioner? What licenses should they look for?
So if someone wants to get hypnotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
um, there are, I mean, that you can Google hypnotherapists. There are different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm using rapid transformational therapy in my coaching practice. So it's not healthcare.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's what I am doing. But folks can certainly look up hypnotherapists to get that through
Yeah,
healthcare. Hmm.
I was just thinking, was there some certification that you would say validate that say, oh, this is not this there, because sometimes it can be a little hocus pocus, but that
Hmm.
yeah. But okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Look on there, find a reputable
Hmm.
Google them. Okay, we got it. So we are talking about that main management. I wanted to ask you a question. I hope it's not too out of the way. When you talked about when you talked about a little bit about the weight management, do you see when you're dealing with somebody who may or may not have had a different addiction, that you see a lot of transfer addiction coming in from when they stopped one thing but they started another thing?
So so transfer of addiction, I mean, that is an issue that clearly can occur. I
Hmm.
think that again, if the emotional issue
Hmm.
has been dealt with, that probably should not happen. But addiction happens for different reasons. For some
Hmm.
people, it's numbing. For some
Hmm.
people, it's uh, to be excited, to feel something. Some
Hmm.
people, it's to keep them alive. So, depending on what your issue is, if the emotional issue with the addiction has not been dealt with, I think folks have more of a risk of picking something else up to deal with that emotional issue.
Right. So, how I wanted to ask a question about self care and how that may fit into your RTT practices. So, what are some effective self care methods that you would recommend that would go into helping? I mean, complementing the RTT.
So, certainly meditation, taking time to ground oneself,
Mm-hmm.
that dovetails very nicely with RTT because the act of self hypnosis
Mm-hmm.
helps to relax one and center someone, especially depending on what the issue is that you're dealing with. But I think that the ability to give yourself grace, to forgive yourself for if you feel like you have regrets.
Right.
All those things lend themselves very nicely to RTT.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I was just going to try to make a 5-step plan. If like somebody is going through in the workplace and they just haven't, they're not to the burnout yet. How can they recognize it? And then what are steps that they need to do after that before they get to that point?
So if you are not feeling well, I think first of all, make sure you have a routine, because many of us are just kind of burning the candle at both ends. So basic things
Yeah.
like sleep,
Yeah.
turning off your screen at least 30 minutes before trying to go to bed, because that blue light from the screen stimulates the brain and makes it hard to go to sleep. So trying to sleep, avoiding cutting down substances, don't have caffeine too late, limit nicotine, marijuana, alcohol. So all these things that we may take in to try to keep us going or to make us feel better, limit those things. Hydrate.
Right.
Okay. Have a morning routine. Take some time in the morning to calm yourself. And you might not be a morning person, but find some time in the day to calm yourself, to ground yourself, because our brains tend to be on overload. Limit social media consumption. That is, those are constant dopamine hits, and that's how it works.
Right.
So give your brain a rest. Those are some things that I recommend up front to make sure that you are caring for yourself. See
Right.
your doctor if you're not feeling well. See your physician
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
get checked out. Many of
Yeah.
us put that off.
Yeah.
So those are some things that I definitely recommend up front.
Right. Okay. So thank you for that. So we know we're gonna have to recognize it in ourselves. We need to sleep. Sleep is very important, and drink water. It's
Yes.
very being hydrated. It's just the simplest things you can start with. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's awesome. All right. So we addressed those limited beliefs, those barriers. Do you think there's some specific limited beliefs that professional Black women have?
Well, we often have, I'm not enough. So then you're working really hard to, and you may not realize it, but working really hard to prove that you're enough. I have to do it all myself. Perfectionism, it has to be perfect or else it's trash. Um, the whole thing around imposter syndrome,
Right.
there are limiting beliefs at the core of that. But the bottom line is nobody is born being able to do something. We all have to learn something, and we all have to fail in order to learn and get better. So those are some limiting beliefs. I'm too old. I'm too old to start over, or
Right.
I'm too young to be in this position. Those are some things that professional women sometimes encounter.
Okay. And Dr. R, do you do any speaking or any engagement? Have you any topics that you've been speaking on recently?
So I have participated in a couple virtual summits, and I have talked about limiting beliefs and limiting beliefs with respect to physical health. Why we may not take care of ourselves, just try to push ourselves. I've talked about I talk about limiting beliefs because it can affect us in so many different ways. So it's something that I feel very strongly about.
Okay. Also wanted to see if there's any topic that you felt strongly about that you wanted to share with us today that was something on your heart that you wanted to get out today and let us know about, be more aware of, something you want to tell the listeners.
So I want the listeners to know that we're strong people. And sometimes being strong can actually, unfortunately, hurt us because
Mhm.
we push and push and push. So I think it's important to listen to your body, listen to your heart.
Mhm.
And if there is something that feels off,
Mhm.
pay attention to that and
Right.
try to seek out what that may be about.
Mhm.
So that is one thing that I think is important for us to think about.
Okay. Dr. Walker, are you reading anything? You probably don't read a lot of journals, but like something that you're maybe for fun, not
I'm sorry, say it
I
again?
said, I know you probably read a lot, not like journals and things, but like, are you reading something for yourself or for fun that you would recommend? What are you reading right now?
Oh, so what I'm reading right now is actually a book about golf
Oh,
because
okay.
golf is my form of self-care.
Hmm.
So, I'm working on my golf game, so that's what I'm reading right now. The book is called Every Shot Must Have a Purpose. So
Every shot must have a
that's
purpose.
what I'm reading.
Okay. And then if you had to tie this up and you wanted to recommend something that they want to know more information about this whole being burned out in the RTT and all that, did you have a book that you like to recommend to the audience or to the listeners?
So there is a book about RTT,
Mm-hmm.
and the book is called Tell Yourself a Better Lie, and that is by Marissa Peer. And so there are cases in that book about patients that she has worked with. So, that's a very interesting book.
Okay, and now you mentioned patients. Should have asked that question. Do you have a success story about any patient you want to share or let us know about and how that went?
Sure, I can talk about, a woman that I worked with, and this is an interesting example to me.
Hmm.
She very, very bright woman in grad school,
Yeah.
and she would really struggle when it was time to do written assignments or when she had to post to the discussion board. And she
Hmm.
really couldn't understand what this was about. And it was very frustrating. And she would feel frozen. So
Hmm.
she would wait until the very last minute because of this discomfort. And of course, when she posted or wrote, she was never particularly satisfied with it because it was at the last minute. So we did an RTT session, and the scenes that came up indicated that there had been some trauma.
Mm.
And so the limiting beliefs that she had taken away were, I have to stay very still and kind of small
Mhm,
to
mhm,
stay safe, and I have to fly under the radar. And this is
mm,
also you're not noticed, so you
mhm,
can stay safe. So the mind kind of continued these feelings, even though she was no longer in a situation where she was experiencing trauma. So she felt frozen, and she was reluctant on some level to kind of show her brilliance because she was flying under the radar. So once we were able to resolve those limiting beliefs, she no longer experienced that terrible frozen feeling when she had to work on her academics. So I mean that's just one example, but it's very
mhm,
interesting
mhm.
and a
It's
very
very relatable. So yeah, yeah, very relatable story. Yeah. So and she's improved with she's been able to get
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. She's had a huge improvement.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Very relatable. So Dr. Walker, I didn't want to cut you short, but I don't have nothing else to ask you. Like I don't want to ask you these questions that we didn't we need another episode for that. So if you want to just bring up a topic to discuss, that we can keep going, or we can end. It's up to you.
I'm fine with ending here. I would
Okay.
just like to say that I do have a free 5-step guide to
Hmm.
getting unstuck, uh,
Hmm.
available on my website. And so after getting unstuck, that allows you to carry forth and do what it is you want to do. So that's available for my website, and my website is drcoach I'm sorry, drwalkercoach.com.
Mhm.
And I really do hope that folks can get some help. I'm
Mhm.
excited about the prospects.
Yeah. Well, I like to thank you, Dr. Walter, for coming here. And because we had to cut this short, you definitely have to come back. And we're gonna get it out to you sooner so we can know what we're talking about today on the episode. But I really appreciate you for coming on and sharing your knowledge, a wealth of knowledge with our listeners and with me, and we'll see you soon. We'll come back and do this again.
Okay. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Mhm.
Bye.
Bye
So,
bye.
on this podcast, we talk about weight loss, we talk about self realization, and we talk about self development. And I hope you gotten some out of the conversation that we've had today with Dr. Walker. Stand up for yourself, take care of yourself, do some self care. Try RTT, look into it for yourself and see if it may work for you, especially if you're going through some burnout on the workplace. And, you know, go to the doctor, drink some water, do those basic things, okay? And we'll see you next time. Bye.